Thursday afternoons in orbit had a particular kind of tedium that ground-based jobs could never quite replicate. Nia had discovered this truth approximately 6 months into her part-time teaching gig aboard Prometheus III, the education platform that floated serenely above Earth like an overpriced tin can, with delusions of academic grandeur. She stood at the front of Classroom 12F, watching 28 human teenagers display varying levels of interest in her lecture about symbiotic relationships in multi-species ecosystems. To her left, flickering in holographic blue, 12 Ulketh students observed from their home system 40 light-years away. They looked like oversized praying mantises, if praying mantises had 6 arms, and crystalline eye structures that reflected light in unsettling ways. So, Nia continued, pulling up a projection of a Kepler 442b tidecrawler. When we talk about mutualism, we're discussing relationships where both species benefit. The tidecrawler, for instance, allows these smaller organisms to— One of the human students, a lanky kid named Kit, raised her hand. Is it true you used to run freight between the mining colonies? Nia paused. This happened at least once per class. Someone had looked up her profile, discovered she wasn't a real teacher, just a logistics coordinator who taught xenobiology twice a week for extra credits, and decided that was more interesting than anything she might say about alien ecosystems. Yes, Nia said flatly. And if you're hoping for exciting stories about space pirates or asteroid storms, I'll disappoint you now. Freight coordination is 90% paperwork, 9% arguing with customs officials, and 1% actually moving through space. Kit grinned. What about the other 1%? Regretting my career choices, Nia gestured back to the projection. Now, as I was saying, that's when the lights flickered. Not the gentle dimming that signaled a scheduled power cycle, but a violent stuttering that made the holographic displays waver like heat mirages. The temperature dropped immediately. Nia felt it on her skin, saw her breath start to mist in the air. Said a student near the back. Is that normal? No, Nia said, already moving toward the wall-mounted emergency panel. That is very much not. The lights died completely. Emergency lighting kicked in 2 seconds later, bathing everything in sickly red. The holographic projection of the tidecrawler vanished, but the Ulketh students remained, their images frozen mid-gesture like insects trapped in amber. Then came the sound that made Nia's stomach drop, the deep, resonant clang of emergency bulkheads sealing. Everyone stay calm, she said, which was possibly the most useless thing anyone had ever said in a crisis. But it bought her 3 seconds to think while the students erupted into confused chatter. The door to the corridor had sealed. She could see the red warning lights blinking around its frame. Locked down, probably responding to a hull breach somewhere else on the station. Except they were an interior classroom, nowhere near the outer hull, which meant, Optimus! Nia called out to the station's AI system. Status report. Silence. Optimus, respond. Nothing. The AI that controlled everything from life support to beverage dispensers had gone completely offline. Kit stood up, her face pale in the red light. Why isn't it answering? Because something is very wrong, Nia said, abandoning any pretense of sugarcoating. She moved to the control panel beside the door and pulled it open, revealing the manual override switches. Dead. No power. Okay. New situation. We're locked in, the AI is down, and I'm guessing life support is running on backup. One of the students, a heavy-set boy who'd been half asleep during her lecture, suddenly looked very awake. What does that mean? It means, Nia said, pulling open the emergency supply cabinet beneath the instructor's desk, we're going to be here for a while. Everyone move away from the door. Sit down. Conserve energy. Shouldn't we try to get out? This from a girl with bright purple hair streaks. Force the door or something? No. Nia started pulling items from the cabinet, taking inventory. Those bulkheads are designed to withstand explosive decompression. We're not forcing anything. What we are going to do is be smart, stay organized, and not waste our air panicking. She laid out the supplies on her desk. 4 emergency oxygen canisters, each good for 90 minutes. A dozen water pouches. Basic first aid kit. Thermal blankets. Some ration bars that probably tasted like compressed cardboard. 28 students. 12 frozen alien witnesses. 4 oxygen canisters. Math was not on their side. "Everyone, listen up," Nia said, her voice cutting through the rising murmurs. "I need a volunteer who's good with chemistry, someone who can monitor air quality." She pointed at a nervous-looking student in the front row. "You. What's your name?" "Lux," the girl said quietly. "You take the portable atmosphere analyzer from the wall panel over there. Check CO2 levels every 15 minutes. Can you do that?" Lux nodded, looking grateful to have a task. "Good. Kit, you're in charge of water rationing. Nobody drinks without your say-so. You two," she gestured at 2 students near the back, "you're watching the door seals. Any change in pressure, temperature, anything, you tell me immediately." She continued delegating, assigning every student a role, a responsibility, something to focus on besides the fact that they were trapped in a sealed room with finite air. It was a trick she'd learned during a maintenance failure on a mining station 5 years ago. Idle hands and minds spiraled into panic, but busy people stayed functional. Within 10 minutes, she had the classroom reorganized. Students sat in groups, their assigned tasks giving them purpose. The frozen holographic Ulketh students loomed in the corner, their crystalline eyes seeming to watch everything despite their immobility. Nia caught herself looking at them and felt a weird stab of something. Embarrassment, maybe? Here were representatives of an alien civilization, watching, possibly still watching, if the feed was still transmitting, as humanity dealt with a crisis. Great. Wonderful. Nothing said advanced species like being trapped in a room because your AI went haywire. "Hey," she said, addressing the frozen holograms directly, "if you folks can still see this, hope you're taking notes. This is what human problem-solving looks like when we can't just reboot the computer." Kit, busy organizing water pouches, glanced over. "You think they can still see us?" "Honestly, no idea, but talking to them makes me feel less like we're completely cut off." Nia checked her personal communicator. Still no signal. Besides, if they are watching, at least they'll have an interesting story when they get home. 30 minutes in, Lux approached with the atmosphere analyzer, her face worried. "CO2 is rising. Not dangerous yet, but it will be." Nia nodded. "Okay, everyone, new rule, minimal talking, no unnecessary movement. We're going to conserve our air like our lives depend on it, because they do." "How long until rescue?" someone asked. "Unknown. Could be an hour, could be longer. Depends what caused the failure and how fast they can fix it." Nia pulled out one of the oxygen canisters. "These are our backup. We're not opening them unless we have to." She saw the fear in their faces, reflected in the red emergency lighting. They were kids, basically. 16, maybe 18 years old. They'd signed up for an educational exchange program, not a survival scenario. Tough. Neither had she. "Listen," Nia said, sitting on the edge of her desk. "I'm not going to lie to you. This is bad. But it's not catastrophic. Not yet. We have air, we have water, we have supplies. What we also have is each other. And if there's one thing humans excel at, It's being stubborn enough to survive when the universe tries to kill us." A few nervous laughs rippled through the group. "So here's the plan," she continued. "We stay calm, we follow protocols, and we absolutely do not do anything stupid like trying to override the doors or punch our way through walls. We wait. We breathe, slowly. And we trust that the people on the other side are working to get us out." Kit raised her hand. What if they're not? What if whatever took down the AI took down the whole station? Nia met her eyes steadily. "Then we have a longer wait. But we'll still make it. You want to know why?" "Why?" "Because I have a rent payment due next week, and I'm not about to let a system failure ruin my credit score. And you're all coming with me." She crossed her arms. "Any questions?" Silence. "Good. Now, everybody sit down, shut up, and start breathing like you're meditating. Slow and steady." As the students settled into an uneasy quiet, Nia allowed herself one moment of private terror. She'd handled emergencies before. Depressurization drills, equipment failures, even a minor fire on a cargo hauler. But never with 28 lives depending entirely on her decisions. She glanced again at the frozen Ulketh students, their alien features locked in expressions she couldn't read. If they were still watching, she hoped they'd see what she was trying so hard to project. Confidence, control, competence. What she felt, underneath it all, was the same thing everyone felt when the lights went out and the walls closed in. Pure, crystalline fear. But fear, Nia had learned, was just another thing you ignored until the crisis ended. She picked up the atmosphere analyzer and checked the readings herself. 6 hours of breathable air, maybe less. Time to make it count. 2 hours into the crisis, Nia realized the silence was worse than the panic. The students sat in their assigned groups, breathing carefully, conserving energy. Some had their eyes closed. Others stared at the walls, the ceiling, anywhere but at each other. The red emergency lighting cast shadows that made everyone look half dead already. Lux checked the atmosphere analyzer again, her movements slow and deliberate. She caught Nia's eye and held up 4 fingers. 4 hours of breathable air remaining, maybe less. The CO2 levels were climbing faster than Nia had hoped. "Okay," Nia said, breaking the oppressive quiet. "Story time." Kit looked up. "What?" "Story time. You wanted to hear about my freight days? Fine. Let me tell you about the time I got stranded on mining station Theta 9 with a hold full of frozen protein bars and a broken heating system." One of the boys near the back perked up slightly. "Did you survive on the protein bars?" "Oh, I survived. But here's the thing about military-grade protein bars. They're designed to be nutritionally complete and absolutely flavorless. Know what happens when you eat nothing but beige rectangles for 8 days straight?" Nia leaned forward conspiratorially. "You start hallucinating that they have taste. By day 6, I was convinced I could detect subtle notes of vanilla and despair. A few weak chuckles. The heating system failed because, and I'm still angry about this, someone had routed the environmental controls through the same circuit as the automated mining equipment. When a drill overloaded, it took out heat, lights, and my will to live. Temperature dropped to -10°C. I spent 3 days wrapped in thermal blankets, sitting on top of my cargo, slowly going insane while waiting for a repair team. "What did you do?" Kit asked. "Inventoried every single crate in my hold, twice. Organized them by weight, then by destination, then by how much I hated their contents. Wrote a very detailed complaint letter to my supervisor that I never sent. Practiced juggling with the protein bars. Turns out they're terrible for juggling because they're too light." Nia shrugged. Mostly, I stayed busy, kept my mind occupied, didn't let the cold or the waiting win. She could see understanding dawning on some faces. This wasn't just a story. This was instruction. So that's what we're doing now, Nia continued. We're staying busy. We're keeping our minds sharp. And we're absolutely not giving in to the voice in our heads that wants to freak out. Lux raised her hand hesitantly. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why do you teach? I mean, if you're a freight coordinator, why bother with this? Nia considered the question. Honestly, the money. Teaching pays better than you'd think for part-time work. But also, she paused, searching for honesty. I like knowing things. I like learning about alien ecosystems and atmospheric compositions and how life adapts to impossible conditions. Makes the universe feel less empty when you understand how much life is out there, finding ways to survive. That's actually kind of beautiful, Kit said. Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation as a cynic to maintain. Nia glanced at the frozen Ulketh holograms. Though I'm guessing our friends over there might disagree with my teaching methods right now. 3 hours in, Lux started coughing. At first, it was just a small throat clearing. Then it became persistent, harsh. Her breathing turned wheezy, labored. She fumbled in her bag and pulled out an inhaler, taking 2 quick puffs. Nia was at her side in seconds. Asthma? Lux nodded, unable to speak, her face going pale. The coughing continued, each breath a struggle. Other students were staring now, fear creeping back into their expressions. Okay. Nia grabbed one of the emergency oxygen canisters and cracked it open. Everyone stay calm. Lux, breathe through this, slow and easy. She fitted the mask over Lux's face, watching as the girl's breathing gradually steadied. The coughing subsided. Color returned to her cheeks, but the oxygen canister was now in use. 1 of 4, and they still had hours to go. Is she going to be okay? Someone asked. Yes, Nia said firmly. She didn't allow doubt into her voice, even though she felt it crawling up her spine. Lux gets priority oxygen from here on out. Anyone have a problem with that? A boy near the window spoke up. That means less for the rest of us. Correct. It also means she lives, unless you'd like to volunteer to stop breathing so we can distribute the air more fairly. Nia's tone could have cut steel. No? Then we operate on triage principles. Those who need help most get help first. That's not up for debate. But what if nothing? You want democracy. Great. We'll hold elections after everyone survives. Right now, you get a benevolent dictatorship, and I'm the dictator. Anyone objects, feel free to write a strongly worded complaint and stuff it somewhere the recycling system won't find it. Silence. The boy looked away. Nia softened slightly. I know you're scared. I know this isn't fair. But fair went out the window when the systems failed. Right now, we do what keeps everyone alive. Understood? Reluctant nods. Lux pulled the oxygen mask aside slightly. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be. You didn't choose to have asthma any more than you chose to be trapped in here. Just breathe. That's your only job. Nia squeezed her shoulder, then stood and addressed the entire room. New game. Everyone's going to lie down, right now. On the floor, on your backs. We're conserving energy and oxygen. All of us? Kit asked. All except me. Someone needs to stay awake and monitor conditions. Nia checked her own oxygen mask, still clipped to her belt, unused. I'm taking first watch. Everyone else, horizontal. That's an order. As the students reluctantly arranged themselves on the floor, Nia dimmed the emergency lighting further to encourage rest. The room fell into a red-tinged twilight, filled with the sounds of controlled breathing and occasional whispers. She positioned herself near the door, atmosphere analyzer in hand, watching the numbers climb with terrible patience. 4 hours became 3, then 2. Her head began to ache, the first sign of elevated CO2. She ignored it. Kit, lying near the front, turned her head toward Nia. "You should use your oxygen mask," she said quietly. "I'm fine." "You're not. I can see you swaying." "Just tired." "You haven't slept. You're oxygen deprived. Someone else can take watch." Nia shook her head, immediately regretted it as dizziness washed over her. "Someone has to stay alert. I've got more body mass than most of you. Basic biology. I can handle lower oxygen levels longer." "That's not how it works," Kit protested. "It's exactly how it works. Trust me, I've read the manuals. Extensively. While bored out of my mind on long-haul flights." Nia managed a weak smile. "Besides, if I use my oxygen now, what happens when someone else needs it later? What happens if you pass out? Then you wake me up and yell at me for being stupid. Deal?" Kit didn't look convinced, but she closed her eyes again. Nia counted breaths. Hers, the students', the slight hiss of Lux's oxygen canister. Time became elastic, stretching and compressing. She might have dozed. She wasn't sure. Reality felt fuzzy at the edges. At some point, she found herself talking to the frozen Olketh again. "You know," she murmured, "your species probably handles this better. I read about your environmental protocols. Everything redundant, triple-checked, emotionally neutral. Very efficient." She laughed, a bit delirious. "Meanwhile, we're in here making terrible decisions based on feelings and stubbornness, keeping the sick kid alive even though it costs resources, refusing to use oxygen because someone else might need it more. Completely illogical." The holographic Ulketh stared back, unchanging. "But here's the thing," Nia continued, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "We're still here, still fighting. That's got to count for something, right?" The atmosphere analyzer beeped. "Critical CO2 levels approaching." Nia looked at the sleeping students, at Lux breathing steadily through her mask, at Kit with her eyes closed but not quite asleep. She thought about waking them, distributing the remaining oxygen, preparing for the worst. Instead, she stood, carefully, because standing was suddenly very difficult, and moved to the emergency panel one more time. Maybe the systems had rebooted. Maybe Optimus had come back online. Maybe. The panel remained dark. "Come on," she whispered to the station, to the universe, to whatever deity handled orbital platforms with delusions of grandeur. "Don't do this. Not to them. They're just kids." No response. Just the red light, the recycled air growing thick and stale, and the weight of 28 lives depending on decisions she'd never been trained to make. Nia returned to her position by the door and sat down heavily. She didn't reach for her oxygen mask. Someone else might need it more. The bulkheads unsealed with a sound like thunder. Nia's first coherent thought was that she'd imagined it. Some oxygen deprivation hallucination brought on by 9 hours of breathing air that had more in common with soup than atmosphere. But then the lights came on, proper white lights, and the temperature immediately began to rise as environmental systems kicked back in. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Station security flooded in first, followed by medical personnel in their distinctive orange hazard suits. Nia tried to stand, found her legs wouldn't cooperate, and settled for raising one hand in an exhausted wave. 28 students, she croaked, all alive, one on oxygen, asthma. Check her first. The medical team swarmed past her, scanners out, already triaging. Someone wrapped a thermal blanket around Nia's shoulders. Another person pressed an oxygen mask to her face, and she inhaled deeply, feeling the fog in her head begin to clear. Around her, students were stirring, waking, some crying, others just staring blankly as medics checked their vitals. Kit sat up slowly, looking dazed. Lux was already on a stretcher, the emergency oxygen canister replaced with a proper medical unit. "You need treatment," said the medic holding Nia's oxygen mask. His name tag read, "Foster. Severe hypoxia. You should be unconscious." "Spite's a powerful motivator," Nia muttered. "The students are all stable. You did good." Foster was already scanning her with a handheld medical unit, frowning at the results. "Though apparently you did it while ignoring your own oxygen supply. That was monumentally stupid." "Yeah, well, stupid's kind of my brand." A tall man in a commander's uniform pushed through the crowd of medics and students. His dark hair was streaked with gray, his expression caught between relief and fury. He crouched beside Nia, studying her face. "Nia!" She blinked at him. "Do I know you?" "Finn, station commander. We met at orientation 6 months ago." He gestured at the room, at the students being loaded onto stretchers, at the emergency supplies scattered across her desk. "You kept them all alive. How the hell did you do that?" "Spite, mostly. And a really strong desire not to do the paperwork if someone died on my watch." Nia pulled the oxygen mask aside despite Foster's protests. "What happened? Why'd it take 9 hours? Finn's jaw tightened. "Cascade failure in the primary AI core. Optimus went down, took the backups with it. We've been manually rebooting every system on the station for the past 8 hours. Your section was deep interior. We didn't even know anyone was trapped until we got environmental sensors back online." "So we were just forgotten?" "Not forgotten. Unknown." He stood, offering her a hand. "Come on, medical bay. You're getting checked properly." "I can walk." She couldn't walk. Not well, anyway. Foster and another medic ended up supporting her weight as they guided her into the corridor, where more emergency personnel rushed past, presumably dealing with other failures throughout the station. Nia glanced back at the classroom. Through the open door, she could see the holographic display panel, now dark. The Olketh students' frozen images had vanished when the power cycled. Something about that bothered her, but she was too exhausted to figure out what. The medical bay was chaos. Students on examination tables, medics shouting status updates, the smell of antiseptic and recycled air. Nia was deposited on a table in the corner, where Foster proceeded to run every scan in his arsenal while muttering about stubborn freight coordinators who didn't understand basic self-preservation. Kit appeared beside her table an hour later, looking significantly better than she had in the classroom. Her color was back, her breathing steady. "They're saying we all survived because of you," Kit said. "They're giving me too much credit. You all followed instructions. That's what made the difference. You gave yourself oxygen deprivation to keep the rest of us alive. That was just poor planning on my part. Should have brought more canisters." Nia closed her eyes. "How's Lux?" "Stable, recovering. She asked about you." "Tell her she did great with the atmosphere monitoring. That data helped." Kit didn't leave. Nia could feel her standing there, working up to something. "My parents are going to want to meet you," Kit said finally. "Why?" "Because I told them you're the reason I'm not dead. And they're kind of important." Before Nia could ask what that meant, Finn reappeared, tablet in hand, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk," he said. "Privately." Foster objected, but Finn pulled rank. They moved to a small consultation room off the main medical bay, where Finn closed the door and leaned against it, arms crossed. "The holographic link," he said, without preamble. "The one to the Ulketh students." "What about it?" "It didn't disconnect. During the entire 9 hours, it kept transmitting." Nia frowned. "So, the Ulketh students watched the whole thing." "Not just the students. Due to a routing error during the system failure, the feed was broadcasting to the Ulketh Consortium's governmental channels." Finn pulled up his tablet, showing her what looked like communication logs. "Millions of Ulketh watched your crisis management in real time. It was their evening entertainment for 9 straight hours." The words took a moment to penetrate Nia's oxygen-deprived brain. "You're joking." "I don't joke about interstellar incidents." Finn's expression softened slightly. "They've sent an official message through diplomatic channels. The Ulketh Consortium wants to meet with you. Personally, they've requested a formal audience." "Why?" "Because, apparently, what you did in that classroom violated about 18 principles of Ulketh crisis management doctrine. They're fascinated, confused, maybe horrified. The translation's not entirely clear." He sat down across from her. "Nia, you accidentally became an interstellar incident. The feed's been shared across human networks, too. You're viral." "I'm what?" He turned the tablet toward her. The screen showed news feeds, social media posts, video compilations. Headlines screamed variations of "Substitute Teacher Saves Class During Station Failure" and 9 hours of humanity's finest. One clip showed her, exhausted and swaying, refusing her oxygen mask. The caption read, "When asked why she didn't use her own oxygen supply, Paxton replied." Nia watched herself on the screen, looking half-dead, telling Foster, "Someone else might need it more." The clip had 40 million views. "Oh no," Nia said quietly. "Oh yes." Finn actually smiled. "You're a hero. Possibly humanity's newest diplomatic asset. Definitely someone who's going to have a very interesting conversation with Earth's Coordination Council. I just didn't want anyone to die in my classroom. That's not heroism. That's basic human decency. That's what makes it heroic. You didn't even think about it. You just did it." Finn stood. "Get some rest. You've got interviews scheduled for tomorrow." "Absolutely not. And the Ulketh ambassador is arriving at the station in 3 days. You're meeting with them whether you like it or not." Nia groaned and buried her face in her hands. The next 2 days were a nightmare of attention Nia had never wanted, and definitely didn't deserve. Reporters camped outside the medical bay. Her personal communicator exploded with messages, some supportive, some marriage proposals, some accusing her of staging the whole thing for publicity. That last one almost made her laugh, as if she'd voluntarily spend 9 hours suffocating for social media clout. She gave exactly one interview to a particularly persistent reporter, mostly to make him go away. "What was going through your mind during those 9 hours?" the reporter asked, camera drones hovering around them. "Mostly, I really hope nobody dies because that's going to be terrible for my resume. Also, I should have used the bathroom before getting trapped." Nia rubbed her eyes. "I literally just didn't want 28 deaths on my record. That's not heroism. That's career preservation." The reporter blinked. "You're joking." "I'm really not. Do you know how hard it is to get teaching positions when you have a mass casualty event in your employment history? Impossible." Within 6 hours, the clip was everywhere. Remixed, auto-tuned, turned into memes. Someone created an animated version with her as a cartoon character. Another person made a 10-minute compilation of her sarcastic quotes overlaid with dramatic music. "I hate everything about this," Nia told Foster during her final medical checkup. "You're cleared for discharge," he said, ignoring her complaint. Try not to become an interstellar incident again. My paperwork's already backing up. On the third day, the Olketh ambassador arrived. Finn escorted Nia to a formal meeting room she hadn't known existed on the station. It was all polished surfaces and carefully neutral decor, designed not to offend any species' aesthetic sensibilities and succeeding mainly in being aggressively boring. The ambassador entered through the opposite door. Olketh in person were more imposing than their holographic counterparts. Ixalmoth stood nearly 8 feet tall, their 6 arms moving in constant, subtle gestures that Nia's translator earpiece rendered as emotional subtext. Their crystalline eyes caught the light, fracturing it into rainbow patterns. "Instructor Nia," the ambassador said, their voice a series of clicks and chirps that the translator converted to flat, formal speech. "I am Ixalmoth, speaking for the consortium. We have observed your actions with great interest." Nia resisted the urge to make a sarcastic comment about being unwilling entertainment. "I wasn't aware anyone was watching." The broadcast was unintentional. Its impact was not. Ixalmoth's arms moved in what might have been the Olketh equivalent of a thoughtful gesture. "Your species confuses us. In our culture, crisis management follows strict hierarchical protocols. Emotional responses are suppressed. Resources are allocated by mathematical optimization. The weak are managed differently." "You mean abandoned?" "We mean calculated sacrifice for collective survival. It is efficient." The ambassador's eyes seemed to study her. "You prioritized a weak individual. You sacrificed your own resources. You made decisions based on emotion rather than logic. By our standards, everyone should have perished. But we didn't." "No, you did not." Something in Ixalmoth's tone shifted. "This is what confuses us. Your methodology was inefficient, illogical, wasteful of resources. Yet the outcome was optimal. All survived. We do not understand, yet we cannot deny the result." Nia leaned back in her chair. "So, you're saying I accidentally did a diplomacy?" Ixalmoth's arms froze mid-gesture. The translator took a moment to catch up. "That is one interpretation. We wish to understand. How does emotional decision-making produce superior outcomes?" "It doesn't. Usually. Most of the time, logic probably works better. But humans aren't logical. We're stubborn. We get attached. We refuse to write people off just because the math says we should." Nia shrugged. "Sometimes that gets us killed. Sometimes it saves everyone. It's unpredictable. That's kind of our whole thing." The ambassador was silent for a long moment. "The consortium wishes to continue observation," Ixalmoth said finally. "You have challenged our understanding of effective leadership. This merits further study." "Great. I'll try not to get trapped in any more rooms." "That would be appreciated." After the ambassador left, Finn gave her a look. "You just told an alien government that humanity succeeds through stubborn unpredictability. Was I wrong?" "No. That's what worries me." 2 weeks later, Nia found herself on a shuttle to Earth, staring out at the planet below, and wondering how her life had gone so completely off the rails. It started with a message from the Terran Coordination Council. Not a form letter or a congratulatory note, but an actual summons. The kind with official seals and legal language that made it very clear she didn't have a choice in attending. "What do they want?" she'd asked Finn. "No idea. But when Earth's governing body asks you to appear in person, you go." So here she was, descending through atmosphere toward Geneva, watching clouds part around the shuttle and trying not to panic about whatever bureaucratic nightmare awaited her. The Coordination Council headquarters was exactly as intimidating as she'd imagined. All glass and steel, perched on the shore of a lake that reflected the building like a mirror. Security screened her 3 times before allowing her into the main complex, where a nervous-looking assistant guided her through corridors that seemed designed to make visitors feel insignificant. They brought her to a chamber she recognized from news broadcasts, the full council floor, circular seating rising in tiers around a central platform. Normally, this room hosted debates about interstellar policy and trade agreements. Today, it hosted 12 council members staring down at her. Nia stood on the central platform and resisted the urge to make a sarcastic comment about feeling like she was on trial. "Nia," said the council chair from his elevated position. His nameplate read, Huxley. He had gray hair, sharp eyes, and the expression of someone who'd heard every excuse in existence. "Thank you for coming." "Did I have a choice?" A few council members smiled. Huxley's expression didn't change. "You're here because your actions aboard Prometheus III have had consequences. Interstellar consequences." He gestured, and a holographic display appeared, showing news feeds, diplomatic, communications, analysis reports from a dozen alien governments. "What you did in that classroom has been dissected by every major civilization in known space. The Olketh aren't the only ones interested. I just kept some kids alive. That's it. You demonstrated a particular approach to crisis management that conflicts with most alien methodologies. You prioritized emotional bonds over efficiency. You sacrificed personal resources for collective survival. You made decisions that, by most species standards, should have failed." Huxley leaned forward. "Instead, you achieved perfect success. 0 casualties. And you did it while millions watched." Another council member spoke up, a woman with dark skin and silver hair. "You've become a symbol. Whether you intended it or not, you represent something fundamental about how humans approach impossible situations." "Great. So I'm propaganda. Can I go now?" "No." Huxley stood, descending from his seat to stand across from her on the platform. "The Coordination Council is invoking Protocol 12. We're issuing you a Vanguard title." The words meant nothing to Nia. She stared at him blankly. "A what?" "A Vanguard title is a designation created after first contact. It's reserved for individuals who exemplify humanity's values in interspecies contexts, who demonstrate, through action, what makes human approaches to problems unique and effective." He pulled up another display, showing 11 faces. "Only 11 people have received this title in 80 years. You're number 12. Nia looked at the faces. Some she recognized. Legendary diplomats, cultural ambassadors, scientists who'd bridged gaps between human and alien understanding. People who dedicated their entire lives to interstellar relations. "You've got the wrong person," she said. "I'm a freight coordinator who teaches xenobiology twice a week to pay rent. I don't do whatever this is. I don't belong on a list with these people." "That's exactly why you're qualified." Huxley's expression softened slightly. "You didn't act like a hero. You didn't follow some grand protocol or diplomatic training. You acted like a human. Flawed, scared, and determined anyway. You made choices that seemed irrational, but worked because they were grounded in something deeper than logic." "I was just trying not to let kids die." "Exactly. That compassion, that stubborn refusal to write people off, that willingness to sacrifice for others, those are the values we want other species to associate with humanity." He gestured at the council members. "We've debated this for 3 days. The vote was unanimous." Nia felt something cold settle in her stomach. What does this title actually mean? It means you're officially recognized as a representative of human values in interstellar contexts. You'll be called upon for diplomatic missions, crisis consultations, cultural exchange programs. When Earth needs someone who embodies what makes us human, you're on the EBF list. I don't want to be on the list. The title isn't optional. It's issued based on demonstrated merit, not on whether the recipient wants it. Huxley returned to his seat. However, we're not asking you to quit your job or dedicate your life to diplomacy. You continue your normal work. When you're needed, you'll be activated. Compensated handsomely, I might add. What if I refuse? You can't refuse the title itself. It's already issued, already on record with every major alien government. But you can choose not to accept assignments, though I suspect you won't. He smiled slightly. You're too stubborn to let someone else mess up a job you could do better. Nia wanted to argue, wanted to tell them they were wrong, that she wasn't special, that this was all ridiculous. But she couldn't, because he was right. If they called her for something important, something that actually mattered, she'd show up. She wouldn't be able to help herself. I hate you, she said quietly. Noted. Welcome to the Vanguard, Nia. Try not to cause any more interstellar incidents. The shuttle ride back to orbit should have given Nia time to process. Instead, she spent it staring at her communicator, reading the official documentation the Council had sent. Vanguard protocols, compensation structures, contact procedures. It was all very thorough and completely overwhelming. When she docked at Prometheus III, she found Kit waiting at the arrival bay. How'd you know I was coming back? Nia asked. I have my sources. Kit fell into step beside her. How was Earth? Bureaucratic, confusing. They gave me a title I didn't want, and responsibilities I didn't ask for. Sounds about right for government work. Kit was grinning. So, funny story. Remember how I said my parents would want to meet you? Vaguely. I've been trying to forget most of the past 2 weeks. Well, they do. Specifically, they want you for a diplomatic mission to the Ulketh homeworld in 3 months. Nia stopped walking. Your parents are? Terran ambassador to the Ulketh Consortium and his spouse, who happens to run the Cultural Exchange Division. Kit's grin widened. I'm their daughter. Surprise. You didn't mention that in the classroom. You were busy keeping us alive. Didn't seem like the right time. Kit leaned against the corridor wall. They're negotiating an expanded cultural exchange treaty. After watching you handle the crisis, they specifically requested you for their team. Something about how your approach might help bridge understanding gaps. I just wanted to teach some kids about parasitic fungi. How did I end up here? You got unlucky. Then you got lucky. Then you got famous. Then you got recruited. That's kind of how life works. Kit pushed off the wall. Mission briefings in 6 weeks. You'll meet my parents then. They're intense, but good. You'll like them. I don't like anyone. You like your students. You kept us all alive, remember? Nia couldn't argue with that. She made her way back to her quarters, where 17 messages waited on her communicator. Interview requests, speaking invitations, someone asking her to endorse a brand of emergency oxygen canisters. She deleted them all. Her teaching schedule showed 2 classes tomorrow. Xenobiology, Section 12. Different students, same curriculum, same classroom where everything had gone wrong 2 weeks ago. She should probably feel different, changed, transformed by near-death experiences and interstellar recognition and whatever the hell a Vanguard title actually meant. Instead, she felt tired. and she still had lesson plans to review. The next afternoon, Nia stood at the front of classroom 12F again. New faces stared back at her. 26 human students this time, plus the holographic feed showing 10 Ulketh observers. These Ulketh students did something the previous group never had. As soon as the connection established, they performed a gesture, 6 arms crossing in a complex pattern that her translator rendered as profound respect. One of the human students noticed. "Is it true you're a Vanguard?" he whispered. Nia set her teaching materials on the desk and looked at him. "Yeah, well, don't let it go to your heads. You still have to turn in your homework on time. And if anyone asks, symbiotic relationships in multi-species ecosystems are way more interesting than anything I did 2 weeks ago. Got it?" The students exchanged glances, but nodded. "Good. Now, let's talk about tide crawlers and the fascinating organisms that live in their gill structures. Pay attention. This will be on the test." As she pulled up the projection, Nia caught her reflection in the darkened window. Same person, same job, same stubborn refusal to make things more complicated than they needed to be. Except now, apparently, she was also humanity's 12th Vanguard, someone who'd proven, accidentally and unwillingly, that humans became legends not by trying, but by refusing to give up when the lights went out. She turned back to her students and began the lesson. After all, she still had rent to pay.